Welcome back, everyone. We'll begin by having Tejo chant.
An unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect Dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and listen to, remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's teaching.
Okay, and I'll just read a brief statement about the practice of dana. In Buddhism, when practitioners share their understanding of the teachings and practice, it is offered freely as a practice of dana paramita. Dana is a Pali word that means generosity or to give freely, and this practice is done without expectation of getting something in return. And this is the spirit of speaking about the Dharma. Other ways to practice dana are to offer support to those who share the teachings, to support places of spiritual practice, and to give without judgment or expectation when opportunities arise. And those who share the teachings at Great Tree do so on a dana basis. So please support their practice by giving what you can. And Dr. Liliane has asked that dana be sent directly to Great Tree. So I'll put the online donation link in the chat, as well as the physical mailing address if you want to send checks. And I'll also put Dr. Liliane's email in the chat in case anyone has questions or just wants to reach out for any reason. Okay, thank you.
This morning, our talk will be given by Dr. Liliane Myoren Papin, and it will be Fear, the Winter Jewel. And there's a brief summary here, which I think I'll share. Is that what you'd like me to do? Just the summary of your talk?
Sure, go ahead.
Yes. Ancient Taoists associate winter to kidney and bladder energy and to the emotion of fear. Our kidneys are equipped to deal with fear. From fear come both courage and paralysis. When we sit, fear is a familiar companion with many faces. Let's explore the world of shadows and kidney energy and see what we can extract from that old wisdom together. Dr. Liliane Papin is a Franco-American writer and teacher of Chinese medicine, which she describes as an ecological medicine, particularly suited to our times. She practices and teaches acupuncture, herbology, qigong, and dietary therapy. She presently resides in France, where COVID confinement has kept her for a while. She has written 2 books, and I will give the English translation, and then maybe Dr. Liliane can say it beautifully in French. Her first book, published in 2015, is The Treasures of Chinese Medicine for Today's World. And her second book, published in 2021, is The Great Book of Taoist Medicine, Immunity Special Edition. So welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, so good morning to everybody. I'm going to put myself, there we go, not because I want to be front, actually I don't really care for that, but because there will be some images and this way you'll see them better. So like Anne so beautifully said, yes, was it your title, Tejo, The Winter Jewel? Was it you who came up with that?
That doesn't sound like me. That sounds like you.
Okay, well, I like it. But I wasn't sure it was from me or whether it was from you. But I like it very much. I thought, oh, that's a good idea.
Pat
All
yourself
right.
on the back, Liliane.
What's that?
I said, pat yourself on the back.
Okay, well, if it's me, yes, good. But I really thought it was your, your touch. So it's interesting. I'm just going to start with a short introduction before I show you my images, because I've done a few of these talks here along the Taoist model, and I don't think I have really stopped in depth on the emotion. So having to think about fear really led me in many directions as I was preparing for this talk. And as life would have it, right now, my mother-in-law, Didier's mother, is very sick. And we don't know whether she's going to survive, or whether it's the last phase of her life, or if she's dying, it could be. And as I was writing actually about fear, as you will see, of course, the fear of death is one of the deepest fears, even when we say, dismissively, I don't fear death, but it's more complex than that. And with my mother-in-law, I'm directly face to face right now through her. And of course, it's me, it's all of us. Through her, I'm face to face with her own fear and my own of dying, and all the emotions that go with that, or fits of anger, of resentment, and pushing people away, and then wanting people around. It's quite a journey. And realizing also, as I was thinking about fear of death, how many of us in today's world are so ill-equipped. It's not so much the case, I think, in Buddhism. In the practice of Buddhism, there's a beautiful gift in terms of I don't know how to say that, but the meditation, or the traditions, the rituals about facing death, like, what happened with Thich Nhat Hanh last week. But if we look, like my mother-in-law, she lives in the countryside. She's a beautiful woman, full of pep and life, and she has rejected religion. She rejected religion a long time ago because of lack of trust in priests and the church. And as she rejected religion, she has also rejected any kind of tool, let's say, to approach death. She doesn't want to talk about it. She has never wanted to talk about it. And I remember once, not long ago, actually, maybe a couple of years ago, talking about my mother and saying, that I was discussing with my mother what she wanted when she would die, and also what she wanted in case she would be incapacitated, which home she wanted to go to. And my mother-in-law became very, very angry. And she said, wow, if you talk to your mother like that, no wonder she's depressed. And she didn't want to, it was the end of discussion. We were trying to get the same information from her, my husband and I. And today, as she's going through this phase, I really feel for her, because it's like she doesn't know where to turn, what to say, what not to say. And of course, Didier and myself are doing our best, are going to do our best also to support her. But realizing how there's in today's world, for many people, when we're not, in the religious, like let's say the ritual of the extreme unction, you know, where the priest would come to the home and gave the last rites. Many people don't even know what that is today and don't have anything to turn to. And the loneliness and how we are afraid, there is a fear of talking about death or talking about dying. And in my mother-in-law's case, it's like for her, I could see that if you talk about it, it's almost like you're going to bring it about, you know, there's kind of a superstition. So let's not talk about that. So, and again, with her, it's a work in progress. It's teaching me a lot. It's pushing me in places that were not familiar, how to deal with that, how to deal with that fear, how to help her, how to support her. And of course, for my husband, he's going there tomorrow, for example, and for him, it's even more so. But that happened as I was preparing for this talk. And I put, as you will see, that one of the fears, of course, was of the deep human fears is a fear of death. And so I'm living it right now. And so it was a good way to deepen the topic, I would say. Okay. So I'm going to come back to Taoism, trying to link, you know, the personal, the tools that, of course, I know all of you through your practice of Zazen, you know, all the tools that you're finding and that we are finding in our practice. And also the tools given by Taoism a long time ago. So I'm going to share with you a few slides. You'll tell me whether you can see it. What is going
Say
on?
something that says, ditch the 40-minute limit.
How come it's what's going on with that?
That's your a Zoom screen.
There we go. Here. Can you see it now?
Yes. Yep.
All right. So I'm going to put it, give me just a few minutes here. Animation, slideshow. We're going to start from there. Okay. All right, so that was the...
Looks good.
All right, so as you know, as you probably are familiar with by now, because I've given a few talks along those lines, the five energies are linked to seasons, to organs, to an energy, to a color, to a direction, to a sensory organ, to an instinct, to animals, to plants, to chemistry. So basically what that means, it's that it's a very rich model that can be applied to many areas of life. And I'm not going to go much into that today because obviously we are going to focus on kidney. And the kidney energy here is linked, and I think that's my next. Oh, sorry. Right, kidney energy is linked to water energy. It's linked to the bladder. And there are emotions linked to bladder and kidney energy. Here you see it says fear, wisdom, and loneliness. So we need to realize that everybody, you know, tweaks it according to his or her understanding. But the big one is fear. Fear is always listed. The other ones may change a bit. So each organ has this association. And so kidneys is fear, and the color is either dark blue or dark colors or black. And just look in these 5 energies, we need to see also the energy that comes right before here, which is lung, and right after here, it's liver. And so because the emotions that precede and come out are also play also a part. But we'll come back to that in a moment. So kidney energy has a season attached to it, which is winter. And as you saw in the first slide, we usually associate fear with dark, dark forests, night, places where we can't see. And so winter is, of course, the perfect season that is probably the one that scares us the most because of the cold, because of its association. The winter of life, of course, is also old age and the difficulties we encounter. So we all have a deep intuitive association of winter with fear and darkness. And many legends that we learn, that we hear as children are about winter and fears, and of course ghosts and stories. If you look horror movies, you see storms and darkness and night. The element is water, so it's, of course, kidney and bladder do rule water. And basically, we can say that according to that Taoist model, all emotions belong to water because they move. They're very fast and they change very easily. They're hard to catch. So that's the nature of water. But I would say of all the emotions that we know and experience as human beings, the deepest is probably fear. It's the most fundamental and also the most hidden, meaning that our mental activity, and again, we experience that in when we practice, when in Zazen, when if we are with what is, we can realize all the layers we put upon fear to disguise fear, to occupy our mental energy and avoid fear. I'll come back to that. I'm just presenting right now, but I'll come back to a few examples and you can certainly give some too. It's an emotion that has a language also. In Chinese medicine, there is a saying that the causes of disease might be the same, but that the places where we experience the emotion is more, or where we experience pain, I should say, is more the language of emotion. So in terms of fear, which is a kidney energy, very deep, the deepest of all organs, we touch upon reproductive organs, which are part of kidney energy. And so it's the deepest in our body. And so the sum of the emotions in kidney energy might translate into lower back pain, sciatica, kidney stones, urinary bladder infections, reproductive organ pain. That doesn't mean that it's the only reason, because again, what I love so much about this Taoist model is that we cannot separate physical, emotional, spiritual. It's a continuum. So for example, let's say that we eat food that is weakening to our kidneys, you know, very salty foods like chips and heavy meat and all those good things, right? Well, it's going to weaken our kidneys. And as a result, we're going to be more prone to emotions of fear. It's going to weaken our kidneys. So kidneys is also, as you see, what gives us the will to live, and deep reflex. Everything that belongs to kidney is instinctive. You know, and again, we're going to deepen that a little bit, but, you know, fight and flight, the adrenals, meaning it's, you know, when we touch something hot and we take our hand away. So it's that deep reflex is part of kidney energy. So if we weaken our kidney energy, our reflexes are also not as good. We're going to be more prone to accidents, more prone to fear. And of course, if we're more prone to fear, we might have a hard time facing the reality of certain situations because they seem too heavy for us. So there's a continuum between the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual. So, of course, fears, as we all know, are numerous. And I wrote a few of them, but it's certainly not an exhaustive list. Fear of death, fear of suffocation. So I was listening to Thich Nhat Hanh recently, actually, on an Audible book, and it so happened that he had a section on fear where he was saying that's fear linked to our human status, the fear of suffocation. Let me check my next slide. Yeah, I'll come back to that also. It's a basic fear. It's one of the primal fears that we experience just through being born. And, in Tibetan Buddhism, I know there's a big emphasis on that fear associated with going through the birth canal and how it remains in us, in the fear of suffocation, because when we are born, we experience the fear of death at the same time, the fear of not breathing. So it's a very deep, deep fear. Suffocation, and yes, of course, we know that when we lose our breath, the panic that can come from not breathing correctly or losing our breath. Then there's fear of disease, fear of suffering, as we certainly know, and through teachings that we get from Tejo, Thich Nhat Hanh, and all the Buddhist teachers. It's one of the major fears we will try anything to be distracted. And again, if I may share something which happened yesterday with my husband, facing again his mother's situation. So last night is when he had a call from a neighbor saying that she was really taking a turn for the worse. And so later on, I saw that Didier was watching a movie, what do you call that? A detective movie, a police movie. I mean, a crime movie, something like that. And I asked him, I said, you know, why? I was a bit surprised. I said, why are you watching that? And he said, well, you know, given the news I just had, I need some distraction. I need to relax. And not because I'm very wise, but because I'm happen to be listening to Thich Nhat Hanh right now on my Audible book. And I said, well, you know, I think we really need to be present to what's happening right now, to our own emotions, and certainly to your own emotion, because it's your mom and he's an only son. And it's a unique moment. And so whatever is uncomfortable needs to be, you know, it's something to sit through. And of course, he heard me, and it was not different from many of us and what I've done and what I think many of us do. But how, when things are difficult and painful, when we suffer, we are afraid of that suffering and try to get away from it, which is, of course, where Zazen and sitting can be so helpful, but also very difficult. I know Tejo mentioned that several times, you know, that one of the first things we need to get away from is, you know, the marketing pictures of meditation as kind of, you know, levitation and relaxation, because as we know from, you know, in our practice, we face very difficult moments while sitting. And Thich Nhat Hanh was saying in that piece I was listening to about fear, that yes, indeed, and embracing our suffering, embracing our fears is where it starts. And that's where fear is a jewel, because there are many gifts in it, much wisdom to learn. And that's why wisdom in Taoism is the other emotion or the other gift of kidney energy. It's because kidney is where things accumulate. So it can be fear, but it also can be the transmutation of fear that transmutes into wisdom. Then there is fear of abandonment. That's a primal one, also with being a child. You know, when we are babies, certainly we're not able to survive. So that's one deeply ingrained fear of that we know as human beings as part of the human condition. And animals have the same in that respect. Fear of solitude, of being, which is you know, I could say a variation or abandonment. Fear of the dark, fear, which is fear of the unknown, fear of what is different, fear of the light, because sometimes, you know, and we know that in many self-help books now, you know, fear of success, meaning we can be afraid of being abandoned, but sometimes we're so afraid of judgment that we prefer to remain somewhat in the dark, not too much, but somewhat, because being in the light can be also difficult, and being too exposed can be scary. And again, I can say I know that fear because, like, I recently got a book published, and you know, I was surprised when my book came out. I could say to people, oh yes, I'm happy, yes, it's good, and at the same time I cannot say I was feeling that way. And it took me a while of sitting to realize there was fear underneath, because now the book was in the light, and so it could be judged, it could be criticized, and as long as I was writing it and I was the only one, it was, you know, easy and exciting and sometimes difficult too, but you know, it was only me. But then there's a loss of control. And I realized that that lack of happiness, that lack of, just being happy for the task done was actually a result of fear, a hidden fear. And fear of humiliation, that's probably one of the biggest ones that human beings also have. And it really leads us to many compromises, to doing things we don't really want to do sometimes, because we are afraid of being humiliated. And if you look at many great stories of people we admire, one of the things they do go through is humiliation. I'm thinking, of course, of Jesus' story, the humiliation by the crowd. And it's a very difficult and very deep fear. So it can lead us to many decisions and choices that we are not necessarily aware of. Because again, one of the things that goes with kidney is that kidney energy in Taoism is also our unconscious. So by definition, we're not conscious of what is unconscious. So here is a slide where I took some of the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh in that Audible book. Fear is born at the same time as we are. That's why it's one of the primary emotions. Again, that's what I said, because it's linked to pregnancy and birth, that need to breathe and survive. And of course, depending on our mother in particular, but our parents, our environment, like in times of war, of course, fear is even more present. And all of that we carry we carry those fears through generations. And again, because it is unconscious and because it is not in our conscious memory, they can be difficult to detect. And was saying Thich Nhat Hanh, desire is born at the same time as fear, the primal desire to survive. So basically, this fear of death and this fear and this desire to live, both are inscribed in our breath. And we can be in touch with those two aspects and we say the first breath and the last breath. So it is indeed our human condition, which is inscribed in our breath, and only our breath can lead us to those deepest fears and deepest desires. So the primary fears, well, I just said it before, the fear of annihilation, the fear of not breathing, the fear of suffocation, which can take many variations too. It's a physical fear to suffocate, but also, we say that in our language, oh, this person or this group is suffocating, or I need space to breathe. So in our metaphors, when we express our discomfort, very often we express that fear of not being able to breathe. Oh, give me a breeze. We say that in English, right? Give me a breeze. Or give me space. In French, we say, let me breathe.
Maybe give me space. I don't know.
Okay, there's also an expression in French, laisse-moi souffler, which is literally let me breathe, to say, oh, give me space, give me. So what I just want to open, and if that can be helpful to all of us, is to realize that here in this short time, it's kind of a skeleton, but you see that annihilation or suffocation, we can conjugate it in many ways. It can take many many forms. It can be fear of not breathing in our environment. So we can say that in that fear, you find very deep issues of closeness and abandonment, and we see that usually more easily in other people than in ourselves. But the kind of game that we often play, or that many people play, of getting close to someone and then needing space, close space, people who break up all the time and come back together. It's really that kind of, the fear, the fear of abandonment and wanting to hold on. And then at the same time, as soon it's too close, fear of suffocating. And so back and forth and back and forth. And so of course, I mean, again, it's easy to say, we all go through variations of that. And it's not something we can solve with our mental energy. The first thing is to be aware of it. But again, it has to it's inscribed so deeply in us that, just like Thich Nhat Hanh was inviting us to do, is through our breath, through our deep breath, to let those deep emotions, learning also as much as we can about our breathing and our observe where we hold our breath when we're under stress. That's a good exercise. When I stop, or because if we observe our breath when we're relaxed and in zazen, that's easy enough. But actually, where we're in the midst of a conflict, where that's if we can have the reflex to stop and see where, because usually it relates to primary emotions. So some people will have their throat, and sometimes it can be linked to the umbilical cord. It happens that people learn that through their emotions, that they almost died at birth because the cord was around their neck. It can be in the heart, it can be in the abdomen. So again, the place where we hold our breath and our symptoms, the places where we develop symptoms, can be precious indications of our own fears and where they are located, and the story that is the story of our life. So of course, learning as much as we can from our mother about her pregnancy, about how giving birth went. And again, I actually right now it's very strange, because I feel I was stuck in I certainly felt stuck. Talk about being suffocated. I didn't want to be stuck in France, with COVID and all of that. And things didn't turn out exactly the way I wanted. But the winter jewel is that with my mother, with whom the relationship has never been simple, but finally, after all this time and all these years, and being away so long, I was gone for over 40 years. Actually, yes, more than that. And we talk. And so for the first time, she told me about her pregnancy with me, but also her pregnancy with my sisters, and which one was the most painful and how long it took. And so I don't even have words for that. It's not just, a knowledge, but it gives me so much tenderness for her experience. And also, like, I learned that one pregnancy was particularly difficult, and I saw her when she was pregnant, but she said how painful it had been. And it's my youngest sister, and my youngest sister is so sensitive, and so, I don't know, she has a degree of empathy that is sometimes pathological, meaning it makes her sick. But suddenly I could understand better, what she went through at birth, and I can understand her fears better as well. So, and the desire, that deep desire that we have, or that to have someone to take care of us, to feed us. And again, that's very natural. And it's part of survival, and it is a kidney energy. And so Thich Nhat Hanh once was saying that all our desires are born from those unrecognized primal desires and fears. So, and it's of course the root of addiction, meaning that being afraid, fear of not having enough, is the root of addiction, or fear of suffering, and then finding an escape to suffering through whatever substance addiction that we find, whether it's game, whatever we choose, but it's, that root of fear. My slide doesn't, okay. So Fear as a Jewel, which was the title that I liked, and I thought Tejo had found. Sometimes I react to some articles I see, and I would say in martial arts or even in Chinese medicine, because fear is linked to kidney energy. I see, for example, about right now we are in a time of fear with COVID, whether, vaccinated or unvaccinated people, it's the same fear, whether it's fear of side effects of the vaccines or fear of disease. Basically, we are in a time of heightened fear of one another. And so I've seen some articles in Chinese medicine saying, don't be afraid. Don't let fear take hold of you. Don't let fear. And of course, we know, for example, that I think it was Goebbels in Germany who said, if you want to enslave people, it's very easy. Just make them afraid. And so, yes, indeed, it can be the root of dictatorship. It's very easy. People who are afraid are very easy to manipulate. However, we are kind of in a conundrum, because saying, oh, I'm not going to be afraid, well, then are we afraid of fear? Are we afraid of, it's kind of the biting one's tail, right? Is I'm not going to be afraid, but it's not something as simple as that. So I prefer to look at it, first of all, as a jewel, because it's not useless. It's not just here to make our life miserable. Fear is a very useful and powerful emotion. It alerts us to danger. And so we are born with it. In kidneys and adrenals, we also have the positive, the deep reflexes that come from fear, running away. So the flight and fight response, which gives us a sharper hearing, sharper senses, our heart beats faster, more oxygenation, more strength and speed. So fear actually is very useful. Where Taoism is useful, the link that it gives us is that if we want to be able to manage fear and have it as an ally, we also need to have strong kidneys. And having strong kidneys goes through, exercise, taking care of ourselves, not eating too much salt, not eating too much protein, and having uric acid in our kidneys. So we cannot separate that. So that means if we take care of our kidneys on a physical level, we will be better equipped to benefit from fear as a tool. So meaning that weak adrenals and kidneys can link to phobias, constant fear and anxiety, and paranoia and paralysis. Fear, the temperature of kidney in the 5 energies is cold. So fear is a cold emotion. Passion is a hot emotion. Anger, which is the next one, right, that we'll do together, it's a hot emotion. Fear is cold in nature. So we say frozen with fear. It can lead us to paralysis, being unable to move, unable to decide, unable to go one way or the other. So, but again, if our kidneys are stronger, we'll be better equipped. Because if you look, for example, in the flight and fight response, sharper hearing, more oxygenation, the cold of our kidneys, it's a bit like breathing. When we lack oxygen, we take a deep breath. So that cold of fear gives us the tools to run, to flight, to fight. So these are hot tools which can balance the cold of the kidneys. And of course, kidneys can, or fear can manifest as a deep cold. So basically what my goal is in saying that is like immunity. Immunity is a relationship. It's not a state of being, a strong immune system or a weak immune system. It's only part of the story, meaning there's a relationship between inner and outer world, an exchange. And in terms of fear, the organ that's the best equipped to deal with fear is also where it is the most located, which is kidney. And I wanted to give an example about that, about the crabs in Maryland. I read 2 articles about the same thing. It was a few years ago when they noticed, as you know, the little crabs, soft shell crabs in Maryland are very popular with tourists. And you find them in restaurants everywhere. Unfortunately for the crabs, but they're very popular. And so a few years ago, it was noticed that their number was diminishing and that fishermen had less and less crabs to bring back to shore. So a study was initiated to see what was going on, in the Gulf, what was happening and why there were less crabs suddenly. And it had been going on for several years, but it was getting alarming. And so that study was not done to benefit the crabs, of course, but basically to see how to boost tourism, because restaurants were running short. And what was found was that there were antidepressants in the water, through urination, and so many people today take antidepressants. It's like the modern antibiotic for the soul. As soon as something is wrong, as soon as you say you're sad, it's like, okay, like my mother-in-law, she cannot at this point, she cannot eat. She throws up every time she eats. She cannot drink. She throws up when she drinks. The doctor told her she suffered from depression and wanted to give her antidepressants. So I was like, oh, wow. But that's very much of a very common reaction. Again, antibiotic for the soul. And so there's so much that there is antidepressant in the water we drink. So we drink it whether we want it or not, because it is there. And so what was happening is that the crabs could not, had lost their reflexes, their kidney energy, their vital will had left them. And so they didn't have the reflex anymore to go deep into the sand with the tides. So meaning they, they would be exposed on the beach and die on the beach. They had lost their reflexes to react to predators and to be able to hide. And there was a similar study in Brittany, and I thought, I mean, here too, it's an invitation for all of us, but what happens to us human beings when we resort to all these chemicals in order not to feel fear, anxiety, suffering, to dull their edge? And, are we becoming like the crabs, like unable to have reflexes or resilience to be able to react when we need to? And so, of course, one of the things that goes with fear too is that, like I said, it's easy to manipulate, but also it spreads like water. Fear is a spreading emotion. We know that, like it's well known among cattle. If one cow gets anxious and fearful, the whole herd becomes fearful. Well, we are animals and we have the same thing. So that means that what we need as human beings is becoming conscious of our fear, not repress it, not deny it, not ignore it. And like Thich Nhat Hanh was saying, tending to fear, embracing it like you would a child, and welcome it and say, oh, here you are. How can I take care of you? So, of course, that means taking care of our kidneys, but you see also that the lung is the mother of kidneys. So breathing is breathing, the breath is the one element that can go deep into the kidney. We often, in Chinese medicine often diagnose asthma as a lack of connection between lung and kidney energy. The kidney not being able to grasp the lung, or the lung not being able to reach the kidneys. So the deep, slow breath is one way of reaching. You see also that one of the energy that comes out is liver energy. So anger, which needs to be also looked at, but anger often comes out of fear, repressed fear, unknown fear. You've all seen, people who are very afraid because they thought that they were losing their child, and then the child comes back and gets a big slap, and anger from the parents. So anger is often a reaction to fear, emerges out of fear. So today I'm not going to go into the physical aspect, food and hydration, excess uric acid, so that means meat, sodium and salt, dehydrating food, alcohol, sugar, caffeine. We always need to look at that aspect. We cannot separate it from the emotions. And that's what I love so much about that Taoist model. We don't need to choose one or the other, or to say, oh, it's only physical, or oh, it's only emotional, or it's only spiritual. It's all together. It's the same continuing. And then Thich Nhat Hanh was saying, it's through his teaching, fear like we would a frightened child. And we need to get familiar with our fear, and get back to see where its color, its location, its intensity, which of course sitting can give us an opportunity to be aware of that. Because again, the place of our fear differs. It comes from the same origin, the birth and our fear of suffocation. However, it's going to take many different hues and shapes and colors. So knowing that because kidney is such a deep energy, we are easily tricked by our mental pictures. And it takes patience, coming back, and not being afraid to look, what's behind. So if I'm, like I was saying, for example, being happy when my book came out and realizing that it was the fear of judgment, but fear of judgment then is fear of humiliation. Fear of humiliation is also fear of being abandoned, fear of not being loved. And, it's like an onion. And we just need to look at it and welcome it, and then just let things happen. Like, Tejo likes to repeat to us, just sitting, just letting it be, and trusting that the process itself of just welcoming will help us move. Because when fear is welcome, it does hold also, it's equipped. Kidneys are equipped to deal with fear. And so this deep unconscious can reveal to us ways of acting, of being, that we do not suspect until we plunge into it, until we welcome our fear. So I've already mentioned the truths of the body, so how the location of our pains are more emotional in nature, and we don't need to say they're only emotional in nature. They are more emotional. We also need to realize that deep fears are more accessible through dreams, art, poetry, music, songs, states of calmness, zazen, breathing, meaning it's not mental, doesn't cut it with fear. And that's why saying, I don't want to be afraid, or I shouldn't be afraid, or I'm not afraid, that doesn't work. Okay, we need to meet our fear. We need to make friends with our fear. And winter, of course, is a great season for that, because it's a kidney time. It's fear of the cold. It talks about death, and death and rebirth. So it has all the elements to help us. How to say, I don't want to say manage our fear, because I don't think we can manage our fear, but get to know, become friends with our fears. And I see that with my patients too. It's like sometimes I want to tell them, I tell them sometimes, you're being very hard on yourself, like, I shouldn't feel fear. I lost my job, but I shouldn't be afraid, because I know everything is going to be okay. And it's like, it's a mental trick. It's like, well, no, we don't know that everything is going to be okay. We never know that everything is going to be okay. We hope everything is going to be okay. We can do everything to make sure as much as possible that everything is okay, but there's no guarantee. So basically, and I'll just finish with that, I'll come back to this dialogue with Mara, with anger, I think, in the next talk, because there's not enough time now. But I will finish with Carl Jung, who has the same approach as Thich Nhat Hanh and as what I was saying, that the fact is that if one tries beyond one's capacity to be perfect, the shadow descends into hell and becomes the devil. Unless you learn to face your own shadows, you will continue to see them in others, because the world outside you is only a reflection of the world inside you. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious, which is again, is in complete resonance with what Thich Nhat Hanh says in that Audible book, which is about the inner child that I'm listening. So we need to welcome our shadows with our heart. And in that dialogue is the jewel, not in blaming or repressing them. Voila, so I'm going to stop here.
It's 11 o'clock straight up.
Isn't that good?
It is. No time for questions unless you want to stay.
Well, I'm perfectly willing to stay a few minutes. I mean, yeah, I can stay a bit longer if there are questions.
Okay, why don't we give back the merit, and then if anybody wants to stay and have a conversation further, we can do that. Is that okay? Yes, Liliane?
Oh, it's okay with me, yes.
Okay, so this is a call and response. May the merit of this practice
May the merit of this practice
benefit all beings
Benefit all beings
and bring peace.
and bring peace.
And do we have any announcements?
Well, I just want to remind people that tomorrow you're going to be doing Family Day, and it will be around Thich Nhat Hanh. So if people want to join, that's at 10:30 tomorrow.
Yes, that's 10:30 Eastern time. And what the spirit behind it is, we had a ceremony last Sunday too, is helping Thich Nhat Hanh go through the bardo. I was thinking as I was listening to this that, there's a quote here that I have where he's talking about, he said, tomorrow I will continue to be, but you will have to be very attentive to see me. I will be a flower or a leaf. I will be in these for, and I will say hello to you. If you are attentive enough, you will recognize me and you may greet me. I will be very happy. But then I was thinking, as you were talking about this, that, we don't know. And Thich Nhat Hanh, he points us to that interconnection. But, I have to wonder, where is he now in that thinking? Is he actually able, what is it really to lose your breath? In Plum Village, they are doing these visualized or guided meditations where they're breathing for Thich Nhat Hanh, sending him breath. And I'm thinking, what is that like to not be able to breathe, to realize you can't breathe, So anyway, so the spirit behind what we're doing is we're going to sing some Plum Village songs to help him. Last night he was cremated. There was a funeral and they showed the cremation, and I'm sure that it's on the Plum Village website. It was quite beautiful. And Sister Chan Khan sang. She's like 87 or 88. She sang. So, yes. So if anybody needs to leave, is there anything else that we need to announce, Anne?
Not that I know of, no.
Okay, Trey, do you want to say anything else? Okay.
No, I don't think so. I just remind folks about the Dana and the information in the chat.
Okay, I'll say Ita Misa est. Do you know what Ita Misa est means? It means go, you are dismissed. And the response is, Deo gratias, which means thanks be to God. And I always said that means thank God. But so if you need to leave, leave. And if you want to stay, if you know how to raise your hand, that's good, because it sort of puts you up in the upper left-hand corner. It's under reactions.
As you think about possible questions, one thing that comes to my mind, a comment I read that said, in the past, and of course in many traditions, but let's say in the past, it was considered a blessing to have time to prepare for death. And today in our world, we tend to think that it's a blessing if you're not aware of when you're dying.
That's what my mother always said. She said, I just want to die in my sleep.
Right, right.
And she
So
did.
So, Lisa?
Thank
You're
you.
muted. You're
Yeah,
muted.
thank you. Thank you for today. I always learned so much from your talks, and I do want to say, like, that about the fear of death within my own parents, where I witnessed my mother, who had a real sense of faith and practice, and she really went into death with a peace about her. And I remember our last conversation, she was like laughing at me. I was getting angry with her of, we need to get you an assisted living. And she just laughed at me like, it'll be all right. And the next day she died peacefully. Whereas my father, who, he was fighting and screaming and get my shoes, like he had to be restrained because of like his fear. And he was just, that's how he entered death, was with this, like, I got to get out of here, get my shoes, where are my shoes? Like he could run away from it. And so just witnessing both of my parents and how they approach death, it's really interesting to now be reflecting and learning from the teachings and stuff of, I think it's better. I hope to enter into it more like my mother and not like my father in that response. So thank you.
Thank you. Jenny.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for the teaching. That was really wonderful. I would just like to say how valuable it was to hear about this use of antidepressants. And so I recently went through a cancer diagnosis and I just finished treatment. And so a lot of the process was, here's an antidepressant so you can handle it, while it was happening. And I'm grateful for it because it was tough. But now, as soon as my treatment was over, I'm like, no more antidepressants. I want to deal with the fear now. And I feel like since then I've been chasing the fear, trying to find it, because it was subdued during treatment, and treatment was just so exhausting. I couldn't feel anything anyway. I don't think it was just the antidepressants, but so now my goal has been like to find the fear, but I've been trying to chase it intellectually, like recognizing the days that are the anniversaries of the diagnosis, the anniversary of this, and trying to like feel it. And I just realized through your talk that I just need to sit down and it's going to come to me because it's already in here. I just have to quit chasing it. So thank you. That's extremely valuable to me. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for sharing this also. And yeah. And yeah, good luck to you. Obviously, you have the already the courage that comes out of fear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. It's Norma bowing in. And it's always wonderful to see you, Liliane, and to hear you. And I have always had a mild claustrophobia and have no idea where it came from. I can't remember a particular time in my life where it would have caused that. And I have worked on in different ways of trying to help it, and it has gotten better. But it particularly hits me when I'm in a car and I in the back seat of a car where I feel trapped, I guess, even if there's a door there, it kind of manifests. So I am, I guess the thing to do is to put myself in that situation and realize that I'm fine, that I'm safe, that there's nothing going to happen to me, you know. And or if I get into a very small car, you know, I tend to feel that way too. And so listening to you was very helpful in some understanding. I think it was another lifetime or wherever it was. Birth canal, who knows? And you know, I've often thought, of course, my mom's passed 20 years ago or almost. And so she's not there to ask. Anyway, hearing you was very helpful, and it's always good to see you. And I'm thinking about you and DDA with what's going on, particularly right now with his mom. So send him my love.
I will. Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you for being here.
Thank you, Norma. It's good to see you too.
Bye-bye.
There's some hands being raised here.
Yes, yes. I think
In the left-hand corner is usually the first person, your left-hand, upper left-hand corner.
Is that
let's
me?
see.
It's Jodo.
Jodo.
Hey, I think one reason I like Zazen is that is a time when I'm breathing more deeply and fully, and it's nurturing. And I'm frustrated. I think throughout my busy day, I'm hardly breathing at all. I'm just, I have a shallow hold my breath. I wish I could be more mindful during the day of remembering to breathe. Don't know if anyone has any suggestions about that. And a second thing that struck me are, you know, our toxic political situation. I think it's just due to fear, and fear is just toxically rampant in people in our society. And I don't know the ways to make people admit their fear and work with their fear. Of course, probably eating less meat, salt, alcohol, caffeine, etc. would help, but those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. And yes, I think right now, and of course with media and stuff, there's like fuel is being poured, you know, on fear to make big, huge fear fires. So yes, for sure, we're living through a time of deep, deep, deep fear coming to the surface. And can we have enough kidney energy, you know, as a society to be able to work with it? Yeah. And Tejo certainly can answer your first question better than me. For me, as a just in terms of therapy, I would say the first thing to do is a bit like I was indicating, is to observe, to just remember several times. And I don't know what you can do to remember, you know, a bell or whatever, but to remember to just observe where you hold your breath, in particular when there is fear or when there is conflict around you. That's probably when you will learn the most where it's blocked, because that's where, you know, the origin of trauma, the fear, you know, which comes again from long time ago, childhood, birth, you know, whether it's in the chest, whether it's in the abdomen, what other things come from that, thoughts come from that. And I think that's the first place to be with it and to embrace it. Now, Tejo, do you have anything you want to?
I was gonna, do you have the Plum Village app on your phone? The Plum Village app has a mindfulness bell that you can set to ring every so often. And every time it rings, you're instructed to take a deep breath. And it helps me to sort of see what's happening in that moment, to just take a breath or two. And what they do at Plum Village is they keep breathing as long as the bell keeps going. So it's quite a good sounding bell, and you can get it on your iPad or on your phone. I think Anne is in the corner.
You know, you had said that the circle you showed, that the various parts are related to the ones next door to them. And I had a question that I have trouble identifying fear a lot, but I wondered, it sort of seems sometimes that anger or grief can kind of point me there and get me closer. Is that
Absolutely. Yes,
true?
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Now, just also know that fear is a word, but, you know, it's kind of like a suitcase word, meaning it has many shades. It can be anxiety, it can be anguish, it can be unknown sadness. Indeed, you know, grief, unknown grief, which can lead to fear. Because like fear of abandonment, fear of not being loved, often have shades of grief. Being irritated, angry. Here too, I will just mention one personal thing that I might have mentioned it before, but there was a time when I would find myself in the morning, especially days when I would teach, days when there was something happening, and I felt perfectly fine about it. Like, no, I'm not nervous. I've done that hundreds of times. It's fine. It's okay. You know, not thinking about the conference or whatever, fine. And then I would find myself in the shower having angry thoughts, meaning thinking of all the people who had done me wrong, or said something wrong, or said something I didn't like, or, you know, and I mean, it was going on a long time, and until finally one day I thought, wait a minute, what's going on that I have these thoughts about and politics and how everything is rotten. And it's just, this kind of rumination of angry thoughts. And it could be people I had met or in the past. It did not matter. It was always kind of that soup of angry thoughts. And then until finally, and sitting and practice had a lot to do with that, until finally one day I thought, oh, I do have a conference today and I feel perfectly fine about it. Am I really fine about it? And then when I observed, I realized that every time I had an important for me, important event, the kid, the little child, is still as nervous as day one. I can be a sophisticated adult, but today I knew that talking to you, I was going to be afraid. And so, but now the difference maybe is that now I know it. So if I hear during my shower, those things, okay, wait a minute, what's happening today? So my ego was so busy wanting to be sophisticated and in control. And, I've done that. I know that I did not leave any room for that little child who is still, going to school for the first time and afraid of not finding friends, of being judged, of not being liked for what she says. It's still there, and now I just know it. It's like, okay, so I say, all right, here you are. Okay, kid, let's go. I'm here. We've done it, so we'll do it together. And I don't fight it, and I'm aware of it. If I'm not conscious of that fear, then it will come through that irritability. And when we say that stress makes us irritable, it's a very sophisticated way of saying, I'm afraid, and that makes me angry. Or I'm afraid of suffocating, I'm afraid of not doing well, or of not being successful, and that makes me angry. So sometimes, I think it can be helpful for us to not have definitions and realize that there can be a numbness around fear because it's the deepest emotion. So we can easily we have a reaction to, and of course, children, for example, who are abused, they relate how they numb themselves, how they dissociate. So it's an emotion that's easily associated with a form of distance and numbness. So sometimes to find it or see it, we do need to pay attention, just like what you noticed, either to the grief, to the fear, or even to greed, like wanting to eat a lot, or craving sugar, or craving a drink. All of those, because it's a very deep, hidden, unconscious fear. So indeed, it's going to manifest in different ways.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Can I say something about that?
Yeah, you may.
I was thinking as you were talking, that process, I think for me is something that has become very apparent through Zazen practice, because what you're talking about is feeling that fear and having resistance and knowing that it's important to do it. So you go ahead and do it despite how you feel, despite the fear. And to me, what happens between that, the fear and the doing, is that we have to let go.
Mm-hmm.
That's letting go. And it's not something that we can, it's not something where you can pinpoint the point where you let go, because letting go can't be seen. you know, but yet when you get to the other side, it's because you let go, you know?
Right, right.
And to me, that's what Zazen helps us to do, to be more confident about which things that, because as you say, there are things that are induced by fear that it's good. It's a helpful thing to see that, you know, or to see, you know, at least acknowledge. And yet, you know, you say, you can look at the fear and say, okay, is this fear something I should pay attention to and not do it, or something that I should pay attention to and do it, you know? And we all constantly have moments like that.
Right, right.
Anyway, thank you. That was, thank you. Beautiful. Oops. Deborah had.
Hey, thank you so much. Just kind of along those lines of letting go and fear and dying, and what happens when you don't breathe. I mean, I think about that too, Tasha. In my experience with family members that have died, 3 of my family members, I was with all of them. They just slowly became unconscious and drifted away. And then my last death, my last family member was my sister, and she was aware up until the moment she died. She said, I can't breathe. I'm not going to be here much longer. And then my response was just, I love you, Pam. And she said, I love you. And she's dead. And I had for a long time kind of a horror around that. Like I couldn't look at it or think of it. And I would wake up at night and think of it. And I guess maybe it's letting go, and I can't say what happened, but I like to think now I've kind of moved to how incredible is that she could, like, she was so close from one realm to the next, you know, like just, she was fully awake until she died. So I see it more as a gift now. So I just wanted to add that.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, is that enough said?
It seems like it. It seems like it. And well, we can certainly, I don't know about you where you are, but here it's gray and a bit gloomy. So there is that, it's a good day to talk about fear.
We have 2 inches of snow at Great Tree.
Oh, lucky you.
Yes.
We don't have snow here. We haven't had any, and it's just gray.
Oh, so sorry.
Yeah.
We had a little bit, but we've had snow 3 weekends in a row.
In Charlotte.
Yes. And we haven't had a snow, I don't think, since 2018, really. I mean, I think there was a flurry, but maybe there's been some flurries, but not like a snow. I mean, this one is weak. It's already kind of melted, but the last 2 were decent.
Mm.
Well, let's let Liliane to go and take a little rest. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, because, you know, this talk today, actually, it's support for, of course, coming back to me too, support from what we're going through right now. And thank you, Tejo, because it has been helpful, you know, in preparing for this event in our life. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And Liliane is, I'm hoping that Liliane will be able to give seasonal talks like this, continue to do that, because it's so, so important, I think, the body-mind connection. So thank you for making that happen. You know so much. Jenny, can you stay on after everybody goes off? I just want to talk to you for a minute.
All right.
Goodbye,
See you,
everyone.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.